A poor soldier thought he had inherited nothing more than a rotting apple orchard until his 10-year-old daughter uncovered a secret buried for half a century. Nathan Miller, 45 years old, once a Marine, was now little more than a man who had lost almost everything. His wife had left, jobs had slipped through his fingers, and the meager veterans' benefits had long run dry. Debt piled up not only because of failure, but because he had poured nearly every last cent into the custody battle for his daughter, a battle he had won, though bitterly, at the cost of his own ruin. All he had left was his 10-year-old daughter, Emma, and the decayed apple orchard his grandfather had left behind in Montana. Whether it was an inheritance or a curse, he wasn't sure. The worn-out train screeched, wheezing into the station of a small town. Its final groan echoed like the fading breath of an old man in the bone-piercing cold. Nathan stepped off the car, a frayed canvas duffel slung heavily on his shoulder. On the other hand, he clutched Emma's faded pink backpack once, whole years ago, now washed out much like their lives. His worn shoes hit the platform, each step heavy, reluctant. Nathan lifted his eyes to the horizon. Gray-silver hills stretched wearily, barren branches bowing and breaking in the wind. At the end of the road was the orchard the lawyer had told him about, 40 abandoned acres, a collapsing farmhouse, and one condition that came with it: he was required to care for the dog living there. When Nathan first heard that, he let out a dry laugh. A marriage he had sworn to guard with his life had slipped through his hands. What could a dog possibly mean? Yet now, as he tossed the duffel into the bed of his grandfather's old Chevy pickup, barely held together but still able to start, he felt more like a defeated man than an heir. Emma hugged a worn doll to her chest. Her clear eyes followed her father. She couldn't yet understand the forced smile carved into a face aged by 10 years and just a few, only that it carried a weight of exhaustion. She hugged the doll tighter, as though to fill the void her father carried. The road to the farm wound past shuttered gas stations and darkened neon motels. Montana unfolded vast, empty, and unforgiving. The truck's radio was broken, leaving only the sputtering engine and the voices in Nathan's head replaying all that had been lost. Emma sat silent in the passenger seat, clutching a ragged teddy bear. From time to time, she looked up at her father, her eyes hesitant. "Dad, do Grandpa's apple trees still have apples?" Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. Nathan glanced at her, forcing a crooked smile. "Maybe. Or maybe just bare branches now, sweetheart." Emma nodded, hugging the bear closer, her eyes still lit with fragile hope. The truck turned onto the dirt road. Before them stretched what looked like a graveyard of trees, once fruitful apple rows, now nothing but broken skeletal branches, bark dark and cracked. A rusted iron gate leaned to one side, loosely held by a worn chain. The low farmhouse sagged, its paint-peeling windows coated in a thick film of dust. It looked less like a home and more like a tombstone with a roof. Nathan sighed just as Emma let out a soft squeal. "Dad, look." A dog. On the porch, a figure waited. A German shepherd, ears erect, gray-flecked coat, amber eyes glowing in the sunset. The chain tied to the railing seemed unnecessary. The massive creature wouldn't leave unless it chose to. Nathan shut off the engine and stepped down. He and his daughter faced the dog's steady gaze. The air was tense, silent. Rust tilted his head, eyes sharp and measuring. Emma gripped her father's hand, whispering, Is he mean Dad?" Nathan muttered under his breath. "Let's hope not." He climbed the steps slowly, hand reaching for the chain. Rust didn't resist, only shifted aside as if to accept, but not yet trust. Emma crept behind, caught between fear and curiosity. Inside, the house reeked of dust and rotting wood. Furniture draped in yellowed sheets sagged beneath. Nathan dropped the bag, the sound echoing through the hollow rooms. He twisted the faucet. The first gush came out brown before clearing. He drank deeply, water scraping down his parched throat. Rust patted in claws, tapping against the warped floorboards, then lay near the door, watchful. Emma looked around and whispered, "It's like a haunted house, Dad." Nathan gave a rough chuckle, patting her head. "Yeah, but from now on, it's ours." Night fell quickly. Father and daughter spread blankets upstairs. The beams groaned above like the distant voices of those long gone. Emma curled around her teddy bear while Russ stationed himself at the bottom of the stairs like a sentinel. Nathan tossed on the old mattress the cracked ceiling above him, a map of wounds that never healed. At midnight, barking shattered the silence. Rust howled, long and urgent. Nathan jolted awake, heart pounding. Emma sat up, voice trembling. "Dad, what's happening?" "Quiet now, I'll check." Nathan grabbed a flashlight, creeping out. Russ stood, rigid hackles, raised eyes locked on the far end of the orchard, on the lone, gnarled apple tree rising among the dead rows. His bark split the night. Nathan swept the beam of light, catching only a moss-covered trunk branches clawing at the wind. No figure, no shadow, but the growl rumbling deep in Rust's chest told him something was wrong. Emma peeked from the doorway, eyes wide, clutching her teddy. "Dad, what's out there?" Nathan swallowed, hard, eyes fixed on the distant tree. He didn't answer, only placed a hand on Emma's shoulder and gently pushed her back inside. Outside, the wind screamed through the dead orchard, sounding like whispers rising from the earth itself. And so, their first night in the decayed orchard ended with a warning from the old tree where a secret waited to surface. Morning light crept through the torn curtain upstairs, drawing streaks of dust that floated like tiny golden specks trapped in the cold air. Nathan opened his eyes after a heavy night's sleep. The ache in his back reminded him of long hours lying in ambush on the battlefield. But now the enemy was no longer bullets and fire. It wore the cold face of debt letters, looming bank deadlines, and soulless numbers. Beside him, Emma was still curled in her blanket, clutching a worn teddy bear. Her messy hair fell across half her young face. Her lashes lay half closed, her breathing steady but not quite peaceful. Downstairs, Russ stretched out like a soldier on guard. His ears twitched at every small sound. Nathan tiptoed into the kitchen. The empty room greeted him with a brittle chill. The rickety wooden table shook under the weight of debt papers from Billings, stacked like bricks on a gravestone. He picked up a chipped mug and poured bitter black coffee from the old pot. The harsh taste burned down his throat, stinging but sharpening his mind. He never liked the flavor, but it reminded him he was still alive and he had to stay standing for Emma. On the table lay the property appraisal, 40 acres of dead apple trees, a broken-down farmhouse, a rotting barn. The value was laughably low. Selling it wouldn't even cover the debt. Nathan rubbed his temples, stifling a sigh. He would find another way. He couldn't let Emma see her father give up. The phone buzzed hard. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Miller, a woman's voice, even and mechanical. "Yes. Your loan is overdue. If you don't liquidate within 30 days, we will proceed with legal action. I can send you the fastest listing instructions." Nathan gripped the receiver, his voice strained. "I'll find a way to pay. Please, give me more time. Please cooperate. This situation won't disappear on its own." The cold click ended the call. He set the phone on the table. The dry echo in the empty kitchen squeezed his chest tight. Rust had risen and pressed his heavy head against Nathan's leg. The dog's warmth pulled him back to the present. "Dad?" "What's wrong?" a sleepy voice called from the stairs. Emma rubbed her eyes, her tangled hair falling over her shoulders. Nathan forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetheart. Come have breakfast." Breakfast was just dry bread and a little butter left in the cupboard. Emma sat on the creaky chair, picking at small bites, her round eyes curious. "Dad, when can we plant apples again?" Nathan froze, then nodded, making his voice firm. "Soon, Emma. I promise." Her innocent smile flared like sunlight cutting through fog inside him. By afternoon, Nathan was sweeping the yard when sharp, deliberate knocks pounded at the gate like a hammer striking steel. Rust leapt up, growling low. Nathan stepped out and opened the gate. A man stood on the porch. Charcoal suit, neat tie, polished shoes untouched by dust, an alien presence in this forsaken place. In his hand, a black leather briefcase. His smile was carefully practiced, but his eyes were as cold as a blade. "Mr. Miller," I presume, the voice warm, almost friendly. "Yes? And you or I represent a group of investors interested in this property. I understand you recently inherited it from your grandfather." Nathan frowned. This farm isn't for sale." The smile didn't fade. "Everything has a price. We're willing to pay 20 times the appraised value. Cash immediate transfer. All you need to do is sign." The number left Nathan stunned. 20 times enough to clear his debts, enough to start over. But a chill pierced his chest. Too fast, too convenient. Rust growled deeper, stepping in front of him. The shepherd's fur bristled, amber eyes blazing. The man glanced at the dog, smile unchanged, though his hand tightened slightly on the briefcase. From the upstairs window, Emma peeked out, her innocent voice calling. "Daddy, who is he, Nathan?" Turned voice steady. "Go inside, Emma." The man pulled out a thick stack of legal documents and laid them across his briefcase. "This opportunity won't last long. Think quickly." He left behind a stiff business card printed only with the name Howard Ellis and a phone number. No logo, no address. He pivoted on his heel, walking down the gravel. A sleek black car waited by the road. The door shut with a quiet click, the engine hummed, and the tires rolled away, trailing a cloud of dust. Nathan stood frozen on the porch, the cold card in his hand. Rust kept growling under his breath, body taut as a bowstring. Emma ran out, clutching her father's hand, her eyes wide. "Dad? Why would he want this orchard? There's nothing here." Nathan stayed silent. His eyes drifted across the broken rows of trees, the patched-up barn roof, and the strange slab of concrete under the barn floor he'd noticed the night before. A weight pressed down on his chest. Something was here, something he didn't yet know. Dinner passed in silence. Emma nibbled on a piece of stale bread, whispering, "It feels strange. Rust thinks so too, doesn't he?" Dad, Rust lifted his head, blinked slowly, then laid his muzzle back on Emma's feet, a silent confirmation. When night fell, Nathan sat alone at the kitchen table. Before him, the bank's letter with its legal deadline and Ellis's business card. One side threatened ruin, the other promised salvation. But echoing in his head was Rust's growl and Emma's bright smile when she asked about the apples. Outside, the wind tore through the bare branches, a chorus of bones. This land was not empty. It was holding a secret, and outsiders had already begun to smell it. The second night on the farm, the Montana sky stretched deep blue with a crescent moon hanging like a fragile silver blade. Wind howled down from the distant mountains, sweeping through the rows of dead apple trees. Bare branches thin as ribs scraped against each other with eerie creaks, creating a ghostly music that echoed through the valley. Shadows sprawled long and tangled like blackened arms reaching out in despair. In the small upstairs room, Nathan tossed on the sagging mattress, the worn sheet crackling with each movement. Sleep had never come easily since the day he left the battlefield. Memories of dust gunfire and the faces of fallen comrades haunted him, dragging him from one night to the next. Tonight, mixed in with those shadows, were thoughts of debt and the polished face of Howard Ellis, whose refined smile masked eyes sharp as knives. Nathan lay on his side, calloused hand pressed against his chest, his breathing heavy. But his eyes were not shut, they stayed half open, listening. A soldier's instinct kept him alert, as though he were still in the barracks. Beside him, Emma curled under her blanket, teddy bear pressed close. Her wide eyes gazed at the cracked ceiling where moonlight spilled in a faint silver streak. She wasn't asleep, but her thoughts were pure and simple, dreaming that tomorrow she might find a single apple still clinging in her grandfather's orchard. To her, the orchard wasn't a graveyard, but a place where small miracles could still grow. At the bottom of the stairs, Rust lay stretched across his large body like a living barricade. His breathing was steady, deep, but his ears twitched at every noise outside. Even in sleep, his body was taut as a bowstring, ever watchful. Then, suddenly, barking erupted. Not the scattered warning of the night before, but fierce, relentless tearing through the dark. Rust howled long and loud, echoing across the orchard like an alarm siren from a soldier on watch. Emma jolted, heart racing. She sat up, hair-tangled hands clutching her teddy bear. "Dad!" "Daddy," her trembling voice called out. Nathan shot upright. A moment earlier, his eyes were weary. Now they burned sharp and bright. He grabbed the old flashlight by the bed and strode to the door. "I hear it." "Stay here, Emma." But Emma didn't stay. As Nathan went downstairs, she quietly slipped on a thin sweater, bare feet sliding into small shoes, teddy bear in her arms, and followed after. Outside, the cold night cut against their skin like blades. Mountain mist pressed heavy, blurring the world in a damp haze. Rust stood rigid, fur bristling, growling at the old apple tree standing alone at the edge of the orchard. Twisted, moss-covered, barren, yet towering, it looked like a silent witness across generations. Emma slowed her steps, crunching the brittle grass underfoot. Rust turned amber eyes blazing. Strangely, he didn't growl at her nor block her path as though he had been waiting for her all along. "What's there?" "Rust," Emma whispered, her voice mingling with the wind. Rust lowered his head and clawed at the base of the tree. Dirt scattered with each stroke, dust clinging to his paws. Emma knelt beside him, her small hands digging too, like a curious game. Oddly, the soil here was soft, crumbly, different like it had once been dug up and hastily filled in years ago. Her chest tightened, heart pounding. Then her fingers struck something hard and cold. Emma gasped, eyes wide. It wasn't a root, it was a jagged piece of rusted metal buried in the damp earth. Rust growled low, licking his lips, ears pricked. Emma brushed away more soil, uncovering a squared edge, a buried object, something that didn't belong. "Daddy, I found something," Emma cried out, her voice both shaky and thrilled. Nathan rushed over, kneeling beside her. He shone the flashlight, revealing the glint of metal. His chest constricted. Memories of military steel chests surged back. This looked much the same, though older, more weathered. He tried pulling, but the metal was too heavy, buried deep, unmoving. Sweat dampened his brow, breath ragged in the cold night. Emma looked up, face smudged with dirt, eyes shining. "See, I told you, Rust never barks for nothing." Nathan looked at his daughter, his heart swelling with warmth and ache. In the dark and the biting wind, her bright smile was a small flame keeping him steady. He set a firm hand on her shoulder. "You did good, sweetheart. But now let's go inside. Tomorrow we'll come back and dig deeper." "All right," Emma nodded, hugging her teddy, and dashed toward the porch, her little shoes thumping against the ground. Rust circled the tree one last time, letting out a low howl as if marking the spot, then followed her. Nathan lingered a moment, flashlight beam fixed on the edge of metal peeking through the soil. Inside him, dread and hope collided. Ellis wanted this land at any cost. Was it tied to what lay beneath this tree? He looked up. The crescent moon hung, suspended, its pale glow spilling across the field of dead trees. The wind wailed like angry whispers rising from underground. When the three of them went back inside, the wooden door groaned shut, sealing them off from the cold night. But outside, beneath the old tree, the rusted metal remained, waiting for the day it would be unearthed and the truth buried for half a century revealed. Dawn spread over Flathead County in a pale ashen light, dry and cold. A thin fog lay across the fields, draping the rows of dead apple trees in heavy dampness. The gnarled branches jutted out like the withered arms of time itself, grasping at empty air. The silence was so deep that when the late cry of a bird echoed overhead, the sound tore through the fog as though it were ripping apart the stillness. In the ramshackle farmhouse, Nathan sat motionless at the old kitchen table. The coffee in front of him had long since gone cold, a black film clinging to the rim of the cup carrying the faint odor of burnt bitterness. Before him lay a stack of debt notices, red letters stamped across them like cold cuts carving into his mind. He lifted one, stared at it for a long moment, then set it down. His calloused hand curling into a fist. Weariness was etched into his thin face, but in his eyes still flickered a stubborn light. He muttered under his breath as if to remind himself, Emma is still here. I can't fall. Emma sat across from him, chewing slowly on a piece of dry bread. But her small eyes weren't on the food. They were fixed on the window where the old apple tree stood silent and alone at the edge of the orchard. The image of the night before burned in her mind, the strangely soft soil, the icy touch of metal beneath her fingers. Her skin prickled just remembering it. Rust lay at her feet, his large frame curled tight on the cracked wooden floor. His big head rested on his front paws, ears flicking every time Emma glanced toward the window. Each time his amber eyes flashed as if he too carried the same secret she did. "Daddy," Emma whispered, voice soft as a breeze. "Why did that man yesterday want to buy the orchard?" Nathan frowned, crumpling the debt paper in his hand. His voice was rough and tired, but steady. "I don't know. Maybe the land's worth something after all. But it sure isn't for those dead trees." Emma hugged her teddy bear, nodding faintly. His answer didn't quiet the unease in her chest. She stayed silent, her eyes still fixed on the old tree, as though the secret was waiting for her there. By noon, Nathan slipped on his worn jacket and picked up the keys to the old Chevy. He gently squeezed his daughter's shoulder, his voice low but firm. "I've got to drive into town to see the lawyer. You stay here and rest. I'll be back quick. Trust me." Emma nodded, though curiosity burned bright inside her. The house fell silent again. Emma sat at the kitchen table, pulling out her old notebook and scribbling. On the page, she sketched the old apple tree with clumsy pencil strokes, a rough trunk crooked branches like bony fingers, and beneath it a small square box, the secret she imagined was locked tight underground. Russ suddenly barked softly and bolted onto the porch ears, standing tall. Emma followed, clutching her teddy bear. Down the gravel road, a black sedan crawled slowly. Its windows were pitch dark, impossible to see inside, yet Emma felt the invisible gaze fixed straight on the house. The car didn't stop. It rolled by, deliberate and slow, then vanished around the bend. Rust growled, the fur along his back bristling. Emma clutched her teddy tighter and whispered, trembling, "That man." He came back. By late afternoon, Nathan returned. His face was sunburned, carved with another layer of fatigue. Emma ran to ask, but he only stroked her hair and said heavily, "Nothing new yet. Tomorrow I'll try another way." In his weary, reddened eyes, Emma still caught a flash of resolve. It steadied her, though her curiosity churned stronger than ever. Dinner passed in silence. The clink of spoons against bowls echoed hollow. Emma bowed her head, wanting to tell him about the tree, about the icy metal, but the words caught in her throat. She swallowed them back, eyes brimming, and whispered only to herself, "Tomorrow I'll try, and then I'll tell him." Night fell. Darkness swallowed the orchard. Emma lay restless, the howl of wind and the memory of rust scratching at the soil ringing in her ears. The image of the metal edge flashing silver in the dark kept her wide awake. She rose quietly, sliding out from under her blanket. Bare feet touched the icy floor. Rust was already waiting at the bottom of the stairs, his amber eyes glowing in the dark as though he had known her decision all along. Emma pressed a finger to her lips, signaling silence. Together they slipped outside, crossing the yard. The moon was brighter tonight, pouring silver across every brittle branch. The old tree loomed tall, its moss-covered trunk like a lone pillar of time in a graveyard of trees. Emma knelt at the same spot. Her small hands clawed at the soil fingernails, cracking dirt, smearing her dress. Rust dug fiercely beside her, earth flying in every direction. Half an hour passed. The metal edge came clear, a rusted heavy box buried deep. Emma panted, tugging, but it only shifted slightly. Rust barked low, urging her on. She bit her lip, straining with all her might, until one corner popped free with a dry, jarring clack. Her heart leapt. She looked around quickly. No one, only the wind rushing through the trees, whispering like angry voices. A chill crawled down her spine. "We'll come back with a shovel," Emma whispered. Rust licked her hand, eyes steady. Together they crept back. But just as they stepped onto the porch steps, Emma heard the crunch of tires on gravel. She spun. The black car had returned, parked at the edge of the orchard. Its headlights were off, but the engine purred low. It sat there like a metal phantom watching. Emma froze, breath caught. Russ stepped forward, standing guard, growling fiercely, teeth bared white in the moonlight. The air was so tense that each second dragged like a minute. At last, the car slowly backed away, fading into the thick fog. Shaking, Emma slipped back into bed. Nathan still slept soundly, breathing steady, unaware. She crawled under the blanket, tears spilling from fear, but her eyes still burned with fire. She whispered to her teddy bear, voice firm, "Tomorrow I'll find it, I swear." Outside the window, The wind howled through the orchard, a shrill chorus like the breath of a secret trapped beneath the earth waiting for the day it would rise into the light. The third morning in the orchard arrived shrouded in heavy fog. The ashen light lay across the valley like a sheet of ash, making the rows of barren trees look no different from a desolate graveyard. The Montana wind whistled through the cracks of the house, hurling gusts against the old walls as though testing the endurance of those inside. Nathan sat silently at the rickety kitchen table. Before him, the bank papers sprawled, red numbers glaring like bloodstains. His eyes were sunken dark rings, hollowing them deeper. The cold coffee in his hand did nothing to chase away the heaviness in his chest, yet he still forced down a sip as if drinking to keep himself awake. "Don't collapse. Emma's still here." The thought repeated in his mind, each word heavy but holding him upright. Across from him, Emma pretended to be busy in her notebook. Her pencil scratched trembling lines onto the page, an old apple tree, a mound of disturbed earth and rust barking furiously. She dared not lift her head. Every time her eyes brushed against her father's fear of being dismissed as childish imagination, choked the words she wanted to say. Rust lay beneath the table, his broad head resting near Emma's feet. His amber eyes flashed from time to time, as if reminding his young mistress the secret was real. By noon, Nathan pulled on his jacket and picked up the truck keys. His voice was hoarse but firm. "I've got to go into town. I need to talk to the bank and to those people sniffing around this land." Emma nodded, her heart racing. When the rumble of the old Chevy faded into the fog, the house sank into suffocating silence. Clutching her teddy, she threw on a worn sweater and ran outside. Rust bounded after her, his paws drumming on the gravel like urgent drums. The old apple tree loomed tall in daylight, its moss-covered trunk and broken branches like the fingers of age. Emma knelt at the familiar spot, whispering, "Rust here." Rust immediately clawed at the soil dirt flying. Emma dragged a small hoe from the barn. The metal blade struck the softened earth with a sharp clang. Emma's heart leapt. "It's here," she whispered, eyes shining. Together they dug relentlessly. Dirt sprayed across her dress, smearing her hands and face. Bit by bit, a metal box the size of two grown men's hands emerged, rusted, mottled, heavy. Emma heaved, Rust shoved with his shoulder, until at last the box came free, lying in the pale light. Emma brushed mud away, the iron latch screeching like a groan. She grabbed a stone and struck hard, once, twice, 3 times. The latch snapped open with a long, weary sound, like the sigh of something imprisoned for years. The lid creaked ajar. Inside lay only 2 objects upon a faded cloth, a brass key engraved with a Swiss bank logo and a yellowed sheet of paper covered in strange markings. Emma drew a deep breath, lifting the key. It was icy cold, heavier than it looked. She unfolded the brittle paper. It cracked with age as she spread it open. Symbols sprawled across the surface, not a simple account number, nor any childish code she could hope to understand. Rust. "It looks like a code," she whispered, eyes wide, caught between fear and excitement. Rust plopped down beside her, amber gaze fixed on the box, a low growl rumbling in his chest. At that moment, a deep voice sounded behind her. "Emma." "What are you doing?" She jumped, spinning around. Nathan was there. He had come home earlier than usual, his tall frame casting a shadow over her and the box. His eyes were stern, breath quickened from the road. "Dad, Emma stammered, her small hand covering the paper. Nathan stepped forward, kneeling. His calloused hand, firm yet gentle, slid the paper from her grasp. He shone his flashlight over the symbols. His face tightened. He picked up the brass key, turning it under the gray light. The Swiss bank logo was carved deep, impossible to fake. Nathan's grip tightened, his heart thudding hard. This was no childish fantasy. This was evidence. He looked at Emma, her dirt-streaked face, her clear eyes blazing with truth. Pride and ache swelled together inside him. In the cold air on this barren ground, her innocent smile was the only light holding him steady. "You did well, Emma," Nathan said gravely, his eyes never leaving the box. "But from now on, I'll keep it. This is too big. Let me handle it." Emma nodded, hugging her teddy tight. Her eyes still shone, not because she was shut out, but because her father believed her. Nathan rose, clutching the iron box to his chest. In that moment, he knew Ellis and the men behind him wanted this, but he, a broken Marine, would not let his family's legacy fall into their hands. Rust gave a low howl, amber eyes fixed on the distant dirt road. From afar came the faint hum of an engine carried on the wind. Nathan's arms locked around the box, his gaze sharpening. He set a firm hand on Emma's shoulder. "From now on, we keep this secret together. No one can take it. Do you promise me?" Emma hugged her teddy, tilting her face up. "I promise." The wind whistled long through the dead orchard like a sigh rising from the earth. But this time, Nathan wasn't facing the darkness alone. He had light the eyes of his daughter and Rust's loyalty to carry him into the coming fight. Morning in Montana came with the lash of early autumn wind against the wooden porch, rattling the door endlessly. Nathan sat at the kitchen table, his coffee stone-cold eyes fixed on the rusted iron box lying in the center. Inside were the brass key engraved with a Swiss bank logo and the sheet of paper crowded with strange symbols as if daring him to understand. Emma sat across from him, chin resting on her teddy bear, eyes wide with expectation. Rust lay at their feet, ears pricked. The three of them stared at the box as though it were a door cracked open to a foreign world. "Daddy, did Great-Grandpa really leave this for us?" Emma asked innocently, her voice full of hope. Nathan swallowed hard. He clenched the key in his hand, the cold metal seeping into his bones. "Only one way to know. I'll have to check Grandfather's records at the county library. Maybe there's a trace of something." The drive to town took over half an hour. The old Chevy rattled and groaned along the gravel road. Emma sat in the passenger seat, hugging her teddy tight, glancing at her father now and then. "If we really find treasure, will you buy me candy?" she asked wide-eyed. Nathan chuckled softly, a rare smile after many grim days. "Yes, if there really is treasure." The county library appeared, an old red brick building with heavy wooden doors, the air inside thick with the scent of musty paper and linseed oil. The gray-haired librarian with thick glasses nodded a greeting. Nathan set the box and the paper on the counter, lowering his voice. "I need to search the records of Grant Miller. He was an accountant in Montana in the 70s. The librarian frowned, then led them to the microfilm machines. Dusty reels were pulled out the projector, whirring as Nathan turned the knobs. On the screen flashed endless old reports, payrolls, company registrations. The name Grant Miller appeared again and again, always listed as accounting officer for businesses that lasted only a few years before disappearing. Emma sat beside him, unable to follow the numbers, doodling the old apple tree in her notebook instead. Suddenly, she looked up. "Daddy, why did every company disappear so fast?" The innocent question made Nathan pause. He wound the reel back and studied more closely. Each report showed vast sums of money flowing through, followed by dissolution. 1974, Hamilton Minerals. 1976, Keystone Shipping. 1978, Western Development. All gone, leaving puzzling gaps. Nathan's heart pounded. He loaded another reel, eyes glued to the screen. A 1978 audit appeared, scrawled with a handwritten note, off-book assets estimated at over $400 million, managed by external accountant G. Miller. His breath caught. He flipped another page. This one stamped confidential in red. Unrecorded auxiliary funds may have been transferred to foreign accounts. He dropped into the chair, mind reeling. $400 million, an unfathomable sum. The Swiss key, the coded sheet, suddenly they fit together like pieces of a long-buried fate. Emma tilted her head at the glowing screen, her innocent eyes wide. "Daddy, did Great-Grandpa really leave us all that money?" Nathan placed a steady hand on her shoulder. His voice was low, firm. "It's not just money. This was the secret he carried his whole life. And now, it's our burden." Russ snorted, stepping in front of the screen, as though to guard the truth that had just surfaced. Meanwhile, across town, Nathan found himself forced to meet Ellis in a brightly lit cafe. The charcoal suit was still pressed, the smile still polished. Ellis slid a thick folder across the table. "Sign this. Your debts vanish. If you hesitate, the court will seize the land faster than you think." Nathan met his gaze, his own voice heavy. "Why does that dead patch of land matter so much to you?" Ellis smirked faintly. "Land always has value if you know where to look." Nathan's fists tightened under the table. He knew then Ellis was aware. By late afternoon, father and daughter returned to the farm. Nathan carried the notes close to his chest. Emma darted across the porch, still carefree enough to ask Daddy, "Do we have to dig more?" Nathan looked at her eyes brimming with both love and resolve. "Maybe, but this time I'll be the one to do it." Night fell. Emma drifted to sleep, clutching her teddy. Nathan sat at the kitchen table, the coated paper spread before him, the Swiss key beside it. The lamp threw his shadow long across the wooden floor. His battle-worn eyes locked on the cryptic markings. He knew there was no turning back now. Emma had uncovered the trail. But he was the one who must carry it forward, decode it, face it, fight it. Outside, the wind tore through the orchard, and the old tree shivered as if to remind him the secret had awakened. Late afternoon, the Montana sky pressed down in a heavy shade of lead gray. Long strips of cloud stretched like steel bands weighing upon the valley. Wind rushed from the distant mountains, sharp and cutting as a blade. The rows of leafless apple trees rattled with an eerie sound, like dry bones clashing together. Nathan sat on the rotting wooden porch, his chair creaking with each heavy breath. On the small table, the stack of debt letters still lay their red, overdue stamps like fresh cuts, his hands' clenched joints popping. He had faced enemies in battlefields, endured wounds and scars, but never had he felt as cornered as he did now. Yet Nathan's eyes were not broken. Tired, yes, but behind them burned a buried fire. He could not fall because Emma still needed him. Inside, Emma sat on the bedroom floor, hugging her teddy bear, staring out at the bleak gray fields. The image of the rusted box, the Swiss key, the coated paper, those mysterious markings, they circled endlessly in her mind. She wanted to tell him to run and spill everything. But each time she opened her mouth, the weary concern in Nathan's eyes forced her to swallow her words. He already carried too much. Rust's ears pricked suddenly, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He leapt to his feet and bounded toward the far end of the orchard, where broken boards were stacked like a crumbling stone wall. Emma startled, clutching her teddy as she ran after him. "Rust. What is it?" Her small, trembling voice carried in the wind. The dog lunged straight for an old well covered with rotted planks. Rust clawed furiously, splintering the wood to reveal a gaping black mouth. Damp, moldy air wafted upward, thick with the smell of moss. Emma peered down, eyes wide. The thin crescent moon above cast just enough light to glint off something metallic at the bottom. "Daddy, Daddy," Emma shouted, unable to hold back. Nathan jolted and sprang from the porch. Instinct surged back with every stride, soldier's reflexes alive again. He saw his daughter and the dog crouched at the well's edge, Emma's eyes glowing with urgency. "Step back, Emma." His voice was sharp, firm. He examined the stone rim, weathered but still intact. Nathan hurried to the barn, returned with an old rope, tugging it several times to test its strength. "Daddy, there's something shining down there," Emma whispered, clutching her bear. Nathan leaned over, staring into the black shaft. Yes, there it was, a metallic glimmer in the moonlight. He tied the rope around his waist and drew a deep breath. "Stay here. Don't come near the edge. If I need you, I'll call." Emma nodded, her small hands gripping the rope tight. Rust pressed against her side, growling, low amber eyes fixed on his master. Nathan lowered himself carefully. Cold air rushed against his face, whistling through his teeth. His calloused hands clung to the mossy stones. Each movement was steady, efficient battlefield training that never left him. At the bottom, the stench of damp mold thickened. Just as Emma had seen a metal box wedged among broken stones, rust eaten deep but still intact. Nathan bent, heaving it up. It was so heavy his shoulders strained. He tied the rope around it and looked up. "Pull it up, Emma." Slowly. She braced herself, Rust clamping the rope in his jaws, helping pull. Inch by inch, the box rose from the well's mouth, landing on the cold ground above. Nathan climbed up after breathing hard, sweat soaking his shirt despite the chill. He dropped to the ground, pulled his combat knife and pried the rusted latch. A sharp crack split the air. The lid swung open. Inside lay a thick stack of papers wrapped in oilcloth browned with age. Nathan lifted bundle after bundle, opening them under the shaky beam of Emma's flashlight. Numbers danced across the pages, shell accounts, Zurich bank names, massive transfers. On one sheet, a neat signature, Grant Miller. Nathan froze. His breath came quick. Each number, each line fell into place like puzzle pieces snapping together. At the library, he had seen hints of short-lived companies. Now the proof sat in his hands. The final page made him gasp. The words were clear. Total assets, 500,000 $, $500 million. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment, gripping the paper until it wrinkled. It wasn't just a figure. It was the truth Ellis and his men were hunting. It was also the evidence that could save everything. Daddy, does that mean Great-Grandpa really left? Emma's voice shook, eyes wide. Nathan set a steady hand on her shoulder, gaze firm. Yes, and not just for us. This is evidence. If Ellis wants this land, it's because he knows. But now, we hold the advantage. Rust growled softly, ears rigid. From a distance, an engine rumbled. Headlights swept across the dirt road. A black car stopped at the bend, idling. Nathan snapped the box shut, clutching it to his chest. He pulled Emma and Rust back into the shadow of the porch. The car sat there for minutes, lurking. Then it rolled away into the night, leaving only dust and exhaust behind. Emma hugged her teddy, her eyes shimmering with fear. They know now, don't they? Daddy. Nathan looked at her, then at Rust, whose body stood taut as a drawn bow. He nodded slowly. Yes, but now I know too, and I won't let them take it. That night in the small upstairs room, Nathan spread the papers on the table. The oil lamp threw pale light across the cold numbers. Emma sat nearby, chin in her hands, eyelids heavy but refusing sleep. Rust lay by the door, a living guard. Nathan copied each line, each figure. His strong hand trembled faintly with emotion. He no longer saw the stack of overdue letters on the kitchen table. Instead, he saw opportunity. Not just for himself, but to prove the truth, to protect his daughter, and to guard the legacy his grandfather had sworn would never be lost. He turned, brushing Emma's hair gently. You did well, Emma. You found the trail. But from here, let me carry the rest. She smiled drowsily, nodding, whispering, I know you will. Outside, the wind howled through the dead orchard branches, clattering like warning bells. But in that dimly lit room, Nathan's eyes burned not with despair, but with the fire of a soldier, a father, a man who had found a new mission worth fighting to the end. Evening settled over Montana in a cold mist. The last rays of sun pierced through scattered clouds, streaking the ground with slivers of light sharp as blades. Autumn winds tore through the dead orchard, brittle branches clattering together, the sound like metal scraping on a forgotten battlefield. Nathan stood against the railing of the rotting porch, his hands gripping so hard his knuckles turned white. The wood creaked beneath the strain, but he did not let go. Before him stretched barren land rows of dead trees like a defeated army. Inside him, another current stirred numbers from debt notices, Ellis's temptations, the secret from the old well, all pressing on his chest like a boulder. But this time he did not reach for whiskey. He drew in a long breath, letting the cold burn his lungs, forcing his mind to stay sharp. He had survived bullets and fire-lost comrades risen from blood and dust. He would not collapse now, not from debts or threats. Not when Emma still needed him, not when a hidden legacy demanded the truth. Inside, Emma sat close to Rust, her small hands hugging her worn teddy bear. Her eyes glimmered, caught between innocence and a vague unease. Rust lay at her feet, ears high, body tensing now and then, a low growl slipping out as though sensing trouble ahead. Emma watched her father's back framed in the porch light, unsure of his thoughts, but feeling the heaviness in the air. The roar of an engine shattered the silence. Rust sprang up for bristling barking in fury. Nathan turned, eyes narrowing. Through the fog, A sleek black sedan rolled slowly down the dirt road, stopping at the warped wooden gate. The car door opened and Howard Ellis stepped out. The same perfect charcoal suit, the same carefully polished smile. But today, his eyes were colder, like blades flashing beneath the fading sun. He walked forward, shoes untouched by dust, until he stood face to face with Nathan. Mr. Miller Ellis said, his voice soft as a breeze, yet sharp as ice. "We need to talk." Nathan didn't move, muscles strained beneath his worn shirt. Arms crossed, he blocked the porch like a shield. "I told you, this farm is not for sale." Ellis's mouth curved faintly, the smile thin but arrogant. He opened his leather case, pulled out a thick file, and spread it across the lid like his final move. Crimson stamps leapt off the pages, neat italic lines, and a clear signature, Grant Miller. "Perhaps you don't know," Ellis lowered his voice, "your great-grandfather embezzled hundreds of millions from legitimate companies. These are copies of audit files. If the court sees them, every asset tied to this will be seized. And when that happens," he paused, eyes drifting toward the house, "your daughter will have nowhere left to call home." Nathan's chest tightened, but he did not blink. His grip on the railing cracked the wood. His eyes flicked over the documents, the familiar handwriting, the signature, Grant Miller. Too real. Too damning. But inside, he knew if Ellis truly held the proof, why was he so desperate to buy worthless land? Then why, Nathan growled, eyes burning, "Are you offering so much for a useless farm? If it's all lies, you wouldn't bother coming here." For a moment, Ellis's smile vanished, his face iced over eyes cutting sharp. "Because we want the simple solution. We buy, your debts vanish, and it all ends. Refuse." His tone dropped smooth and lethal, "and you'll drown in lawsuits for years. I don't think an unemployed veteran can stand against the system." "Rust!" roared, his bark cracking like thunder teeth bared white in the dim light. Ellis flinched for just a beat, his eyes flicking to the dog before sliding back to Nathan. His smile returned, but hollow now. Inside, Emma pressed against the curtain, her small heart racing. Words like embezzlement, seize your daughter, they pierced her young mind like knives. But she saw her father's back straight and unmoving, and something fierce and trusting sparked inside her. Nathan shoved the file back, his voice low and solid. "You can scare people with papers, but not me. If it's truth you want, the court will prove it, and I swear the truth won't stand with you." Ellis stared at him long and hard. The air was taut, ready to snap. At last he folded the file, slid it back into his case, and said coldly, "You have 3 days. Don't bury yourself with this land." The car door slammed. The black sedan roared to life, rolling away, trailing dust and leaving behind a suffocating emptiness. Rust barked after it until it vanished into the fog, his growls echoing through the valley. Nathan stood there still, sweat beading his forehead. His hand trembled faintly, but his eyes blazed not with the defeat Ellis wanted, but with renewed fire. He stepped inside to find Emma clutching her teddy eyes wide with worry. He knelt to her level, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. "Emma," he said softly, voice firm yet gentle, "from now on, I'll carry it all. You just need to trust me. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, hard eyes wet but shining. Russ dropped across the doorway, panting, yet his amber eyes remained sharp. Night fell, wind howling through the roof beams. Nathan sat at the table, spreading the papers pulled from the well. The figure, $500, glared like an engraving. He brushed the edge of the page, whispering, "If great-grandfather truly left this legacy, then the truth will come out. I will protect Emma, and I will protect the Miller name." In the dark, Emma lay still, listening to her father's voice echo from the kitchen. A small smile touched her lips. For the first time, she felt certain her father had not given up. He was still the wall she could lean on, and just a small light would be enough to guide him forward. Morning in Montana was smothered by a thick fog. Pale, milky streams of mist slipped through the cracks of the rotting wooden door, curling inside the old house until everything seemed draped beneath a funeral shroud. Nathan sat at the kitchen table, his posture straight, but his shoulders taut. In front of him lay a letter from the bank in Billings. The black print was harsh, merciless, like a hammer-strike final deadline 3 days. If he didn't pay, everything would be seized, including the small backup apartment in Billings. Nathan's calloused hand trembled slightly as he folded the letter. He didn't crumple, it didn't lash out. He simply set it down and drew in a deep breath. Despair hovered near waiting. But Emma was still here. He could not fall. Across the room, Emma sat on a chair chin, resting on her worn teddy bear. She looked at her father, then at the pink backpack bulging against the foot of the bed. Rust lay squarely beside it, his massive head resting on his paws, amber eyes glinting whenever Nathan moved. "Daddy," Emma's small voice wavered. What if Great-Grandpa really left us something?" Nathan turned his eyes tired but stern. "You're dreaming again, Emma. All I inherited was a dead orchard." Emma pressed her lips tight, hugging her bear, but her eyes betrayed the flicker of anxious hope. When Nathan stepped out to stack firewood, Emma immediately dragged the backpack closer. She reached for the zipper, but Rust whined low, his eyes warning. Emma hesitated, then whispered firmly, "Daddy has to see." The wooden door groaned as Nathan returned, dropping the bundle of logs, his breath still heavy from the work. Emma stood in the middle of the room, both hands behind her back hiding the backpack. Her eyes shone bright, though her body trembled. "Daddy," she said, voice small but steady, "I have something." Great-Grandpa left it. Nathan frowned and stepped closer. Emma tugged at the zipper. The faint hiss split the silence, then thick yellowed bundles of paper slid out. A corner slipped to the floor, showing a clear, careful signature, Grant Miller. Nathan froze. He dropped into a chair, hands shaking as he picked up the stack. A musty odor rose from the pages. Numbers sprawled thick across them, bank accounts in Zurich, Singapore, Geneva. Balances in the millions, tens of millions. Each page bore Grant Miller's signature, sharp, deliberate. Emma clutched her teddy eyes wide. She whispered, I don't understand, but I think it matters a lot." Nathan flipped further. Lines, stamps, columns of figures drummed into his skull like pounding drums until he reached the last page. One line stood alone, bold beneficiary Emma Miller. Nathan went still. For a heartbeat, it was as if his heart stopped. He read the 3 words again and again, his hoarse voice breaking into the silence, beneficiary. Emma Miller. Emma gasped, her eyes shimmering. That's me." Daddy Nathan looked at her. In her innocent gaze, he saw curiosity, worry, and unshaken purity. His throat tightened. "Yes, Emma. He chose you. Everything. All of it. He left to you." The room fell into heavy silence. Only the wind hissed through the cracks, mingling with Rust's low growl like a distant warning. Nathan closed the bundle, his hand gripping tight. Ellis's threats rushed back, forged files, cold smiles. If Ellis discovered Emma was the beneficiary, Nathan's chest constricted. He rose sharply, clutching the papers to his chest, his eyes igniting with resolve. "Emma, from now on, you never go anywhere alone. You stay with me and Rust." "Do you hear?" Emma nodded hard, her eyes shining with trust. Twilight draped the dead orchard in shadows. Nathan locked every door, set an iron bar beside the table. He did not sleep. Rust sprawled across the doorway, ears stiff. Emma curled beneath her blanket, but her eyes still glowed in the dark, watching her father. In the decaying house, Nathan whispered a vow: "I will protect you. No matter Ellis's power, I will not let them steal the legacy your great-grandfather left you." Outside, the wind shrieked through the bare orchard branches, clashing like bones. But inside the small room in the thick dark, a fire had been lit. The fire of resolve, of duty, and of a father's love no force could break. The courtroom in Helena blazed with light, its vaulted ceiling echoing every tense whisper. The benches were packed with reporters, cameras flashing without pause. At the defense table, Nathan Miller sat upright in a plain suit, his calloused hands clasped so tightly, his knuckles turned white. Beside him, Emma nestled close, her innocent eyes glowing with resolve. At their feet, Rust lay still, head resting on his paws, amber gaze sharp as a sentry's. Across the aisle, Howard Ellis and the Apex legal team formed a solid row of dark suits, a cold black wall. Ellis sat in the center tie, immaculate, but his face drawn tight, jaw clenched. Before him lay a thick stack of files, accusations stamped in blazing red. The gavel thundered sharp and final. The court is now in session. An Apex attorney, Rose voice steady but hard as steel. Grant Miller, the defendant's great-grandfather, embezzled hundreds of millions of dollars from corporations in the 1970s. Those funds were funneled into secret accounts. These are the audit records. He dropped the heavy bundle on the judge's bench. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Nathan bowed his head for a moment, his shoulders heavy, but a small hand gripped his whispering like a breeze. "Daddy, trust me." When their turn came, Nathan's lawyer stood. He opened his briefcase and produced the yellowed bundle's Grant Miller's signature, plain and firm on every page. The final sheet was lifted high. Total assets $500,000. Beneficiary Emma Miller. The courtroom fell silent. Only the sound of papers turning as the judge read page after page. These documents, the lawyer declared, his voice ringing, prove Grant Miller did not steal for himself. He froze the illicit funds siphoned off by powerful men of his era, locking them away in foreign accounts. His intent in naming a beneficiary was not personal gain, but to turn black money into clean funds for the good of the community. The judge looked up, eyes like steel sweeping to Ellis. "Mr. Ellis, do you have a rebuttal?" Ellis shot to his feet, face-flushed voice rasping. These papers could be forged. A 10-year-old child could never. Exactly, the judge cut in voice sharp as a blade. A 10-year-old child could not forge accounting records from 40 years ago. Laughter rippled across the room. Ellis froze, sweat beating at his temple fists, clenching until blood showed. Nathan rose, his voice steady and resonant. "My great-grandfather left no debts, he left an honorable legacy. Ellis tried to steal it, but my daughter Emma uncovered the truth. I only speak the words he meant for her to carry." Emma lifted her chin, her clear voice carrying, "Great-grandpa wasn't a bad man. He left everything to protect." Rust raised his head and barked once loud and certain, sealing the moment. The gallery seemed to shake with the simple force of truth. The gavel cracked again, decisive. The court recognizes the validity of these documents. Beneficiary rights belong to Emma Miller. Apex has no standing to appeal. This case is closed. The sound of the gavel struck like a shot ending a battle. Nathan closed his eyes, exhaling long and hard. Emma burst into tears, throwing her arms around him. Rust barked triumphantly, his voice echoing like a victory hymn. Across the aisle, Ellis sat ashen-faced. Reporters swarmed, cameras firing like lightning, but to Nathan, the noise faded into nothing. He heard only his daughter's heartbeat, steady, proud, free. Weeks later, the Flathead Orchard was no longer a graveyard of trees. Machines roared, workers cut away dead branches, planting rows of fresh young saplings. At the center rose a modern glass building, a gleaming brass plaque at its entrance, Grant Miller Veterans Recovery Center. On opening day, veterans came from everywhere. Laughter, music, and hope lit their eyes. Nathan strode forward in his old uniform, silver medal gleaming. Emma skipped beside him in a white dress, her hand in his. Rust, muzzle graying, still carried himself like a battle-worn soldier, tail sweeping in rhythm. Before the plaque, Nathan bowed his head, pressing his forehead lightly to his daughter's. His voice was thick. "I once thought I would leave only debts, but you kept the light alive." Emma hugged him, smiling through tears. "We kept it together. You, me, and Rust." Rust barked, the sound echoing across the reborn orchard. Sunset bathed the young trees in gold. The plaque gleamed with its inscription, "For those who fell, for those who will rise." And Nathan understood the true legacy was not $500 million, but honor, trust, and resilience. What his great-grandfather preserved, Emma discovered, and he now bore forward. The next spring, Flathead Orchard blossomed anew. Rows of saplings stood straight, green leaves trembling in the breeze. wildflowers flaring bright yellow between them like tiny torches. Children's laughter rang out. Emma raced down a path, her pink backpack now filled only with books and crayons. Rust, slower but still spry, wagged his tail like a proud banner. Nathan stood back leaning on his hoe, his face finally at peace. He knew the legacy was not in dollars, but in moments like this where a child kept her innocence and a broken soldier reclaimed his faith to stand tall. At dusk, during a veterans memorial in the new center, Nathan spoke in his deep voice. "We lost much in war, but we must never lose faith. And today that legacy has become a place of healing." Emma pulled Rust up onto the stage, clutching the microphone. Her voice rang out innocent and true. "Great-grandpa left me an old box of papers, but what I really got was Daddy Rust and everyone here. I want this orchard to always have laughter." The hall erupted in gentle laughter, many wiping their eyes. Nathan gathered his daughter close. Sunset spread gold across the orchard, framing the silhouettes of three guardians, father, daughter, and faithful dog. In that moment, Nathan knew they had stepped out of darkness, leaving behind a legacy not of money, but of faith, resilience, and love carried on through generations. The story closed not with legal victory alone, but with the rebirth of trust. Emma, a 10-year-old child, had sparked the secret through innocence and curiosity. Nathan, a broken Marine, turned that legacy into strength to rise again. And Rust, the silent soldier, proved that loyalty too is part of justice. The lesson is simple. Light can come from the smallest things: a child's question, a held hand, or a bark in the night. And when we hold fast to faith, no darkness can prevail. Dear friends listening now, have you thought about the legacy you'll leave to the next generation? Will it be money or courage and integrity? Have you ever seen a child's innocent eyes change the course of an adult's life? I would love to hear your thoughts, and I wish you and your family peace and hope today.